Nazi seizure of power in 1933, Hitler established a Reich Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, headed by Joseph Goebbels. The ministry's aim was to ensure that the Nazi message was successfully communicated through art, music, theatre, films, books, radio, educational material, and the press. There were several audiences for the Nazi propaganda. Germans were reminded of the struggle against foreign enemies and Jewish subversion. Joseph Goebbels was a German Nazi politician who was the Nazi district leader of Berlin, the chief propagandist for the Nazi Party, and then Reich Minister of Propaganda from 1933 to 1945. He was one of Adolf Hitler's closest and most devoted acolytes, known for his skill in public speaking and his deeply virulent anti-Semitism, which was evident in his publicly voiced views. He advocated progressively harsher discrimination, including the extermination of the Jews in the Holocaust. Goebbels, who aspired to be an author, obtained a Doctor of Psychology degree from the University of Heidelberg in 1921. He joined the Nazi Party in 1924 and worked with Gregor Strasser in its northern branch. He was appointed the district leader of Berlin in 1926, where he began to take an interest in the use of propaganda to promote the Nazi Party and its program. After the Nazis came to power in 1933, Goebbels' propaganda ministry quickly gained and exerted control over the news, media, arts, and information in Germany. He was particularly adept at using the relatively new media of radio and film for propaganda purposes. Topics for party propaganda including anti-Semitism, attacks on the Christian churches, and after the start of the World War, attempting to shape morale. Many of his cultural policies were fairly liberal, but he had to capitulate to the demands of the nationalist extremist. Even his propaganda messages were limited by the rationale that ceaseless agitation only dulls the receptive powers of the listeners. His role underwent little change with the outbreak of World War II. As soon as the war began, Goebbels led the propaganda ministry from the front by boosting the morale of the soldiers and the German people by means of radio and newsreels.
The trespassing at this point was strictly forbidden by the British, but not to German soldiers, gloats the commentator. British and French captives are pointed out.
Das sind Soldaten der De Gaulle Armee.
This destruction is attributed to American mercenaries. Note the emphasis on religious desecration.
Auf den Straßen, die nach Westen führen, marschieren Panzer, Nachschub und unsere Grenadiere.
Joseph himself used to give speeches which were full of energy, and the way he used his emotions in his speeches made the people support him, the Nazi Party, Hitler, and the war.
Gegenstände behaupten, das deutsche Volk wehrt sich gegen die totale Kriegsmaßnahme der Regierung. Es will nicht den totalen Krieg, sagen die Engländer, sondern die Kapitulation.
Goebbels' propaganda ministry was so successful that Hitler never changed his position. The high morale of the soldiers owed to the early success of Germany in the war and also to the great work of Joseph. Goebbels' mastery of propaganda was particularly apparent after Germany's defeats in Stalingrad and Africa. Goebbels did not falsify the facts of the prevailing situation. On the contrary, the main thrust of his propaganda, which he carried on personally and without respite in the press and over the radio, was to continually raise hope by citing historical parallels and making other comparisons, by conjuring up allegedly immutable laws of history, or even, as a last resort, by referring to some secret medical weapons which Nazi Germany didn't possess. His public appearances, in sharp contrast to those of many other prominent Nazis who had retreated to bunkers and fortifications, did much to improve an image that had until then been overwhelmingly negative. Goebbels' work was especially effective in intensifying the efforts of the home front. He became the protagonist of total war. In 1943, Goebbels began to pressurize Hitler to introduce measures that would produce total war, including closing businesses not essential to the war effort, conscripting women into the labor force, and enlisting men in previously exempt occupations into the Wehrmacht. Even as Allied bombing was taking its toll on the German cities and people, Goebbels still tried to gather people and keep their morale high. Throughout the war, the propaganda ministry kept its newsreels consistent, with them showing Germany's victories in battles, which would largely false when the war was on its last 2 years. He kept trying his level best to motivate people. As the war drew to a close and Nazi Germany faced defeat, Goebbels' family joined him in Berlin. They moved into the underground war bunker, part of Hitler's underground bunker complex, on 22nd April 1945. Hitler committed suicide on 30th April 1945, and in accordance with Hitler's will, Goebbels succeeded him as the Chancellor of Germany. He served 1 day in this post. The following day, Goebbels and his family committed suicide after poisoning their 6 children with cyanide. He was the most loyal minister Hitler ever had.